are you? I'm doing great. What's up, boy?
Is there anybody in there switch you over to your iPad?
I don't think so.
Okay,
So
I'll
if
come
you
do
can
it.
flip that switch, hey, and if you can turn those spots off too. Thank you, man. Good morning, folks. How is everybody doing 3 days into the new year? Happy New Year so far, so good? Okay, good, good. So far, so good. 3 down, 362 to go, right? Something like that. Something like that. Well, I am glad you're here on the first day of, first Sunday, first Lord's Day of the new year. And we are going to continue our series, Archaeology and the Life of Christ. I have thoroughly been enjoying it. I hope you have too. It is always such an encouraging thing to kind of relive, go to the places where God chose to unfold his plan of redemption, the stage, as I often say, the stage on which the divine drama played out. It's just a reminder that we're not talking about stories. We're talking about real people in real places. And so it has been, it's always a great journey. Well, if you were with us last week, the first couple of weeks we were in Nazareth because that's where the story of the gospel began, when an angel appeared to Mary and announced that the Holy Spirit, through the work of the Holy Spirit, she would conceive and bear a son. And so we were in Nazareth. Then we went to Bethlehem, and we spent a little time in Bethlehem, the place of his birth. And some of the areas near Bethlehem, like Herod the Great's palace, that's 3 miles from Bethlehem, that you can see from Bethlehem, as we talked about Herod's attempt to destroy the Christ. Then last week, we went north as we began the ministry of Christ. And that, of course, took place in Capernaum, on the northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee. If you were with us, was Jesus' home base for his Galilean ministry. And so we spent some time in the great archaeological ruins there, especially the two real centerpieces of that site, and that is the synagogue and the home, very likely the home of the Apostle Peter. Well, today we're going to go back to the Sea of Galilee, and because this was where 70% of the ministry of Christ took place, on the kind of the northwest area of the Sea of Galilee. That's where this shot's taken. This was part of our group a few years ago. We had just finished going through Capernaum, and just kind of if you just wanted to walk down to the Sea of Galilee, you can get a sense of the size there. It is a big lake. It's called a sea, but in reality, it is a freshwater lake. It is the hub of Galilee, and the centerpiece of Galilee. And it is about 13 miles long at its longest point. These are, by the way, these photographs here are also taken from around the northwest corner of the Sea of Galilee, near the area of Capernaum. It is about 13 miles long at its longest point. It's about 8 miles wide at its widest point. It's not a real deep lake. At its deepest point, it's about 150 feet deep, and so it's not excessively deep. It's a beautiful place to go. Sunrises are absolutely gorgeous there. We talked about that a little bit last week, as the prophecy of the coming Messiah is described in terms of sunrise and the dawning of the sun in the Galilee. And so it's always a wonderful thing. Well, as we think about the Sea of Galilee, I want us to understand something really important about the ministry of Christ there. So we're going to go back to Galilee. We spent time in Capernaum last week. We're going to spend some time at some of the other sites as well. But today what we're going to do is basically do an overview of the area of the Sea of Galilee. Sometimes people might be under the impression where they say, well, why in the world did Jesus withdraw to the Galilee? And that was the place, that was the epicenter of his ministry. Why the Galilee? Why off the beaten path? Well, the answer is it wasn't off the beaten path. And if you were here with us last week, we really talked about that. a major road, the major road that connected Egypt to both Europe and Asia, ran right along the shore of the northwestern part of the Sea of Galilee, called the Via Maris. Some call it the Great Trunk Road in history. The Way of the Sea, it's sometimes called, the Via Maris. And so it went right through Capernaum. And so it was a military center because of its strategic location. Roman military forces were billeted there at Capernaum. It was a major toll office that was there. Matthew would have been there in the toll office as a tax collector. That would have been the focus of his work. It wasn't personal income tax. It was collecting tolls because it was a major transportation artery. Anytime goods would pass north to south from Europe to Asia to Egypt to Africa, it always went through there. So it wasn't off the beaten path. As I said, it was the hub of Galilee. And so when we think about the population of this area around the Sea of Galilee, it was a very concentrated population. In fact, it's hard to really put our finger on how many people lived in the cities and villages around the Sea of Galilee. And there were several villages around the Sea of Galilee. And the reasons are obvious. Everything that we just talked about. I mean, if you're going to build a town somewhere, what do you want? Well, you want a water source. And this is a freshwater source. In fact, it's the largest lake in Israel. It's one of the largest freshwater lakes in all of the region. And so you want a freshwater source. It's a freshwater source. You want fertile land. And all around the lake there, now you're going to go up into the Galilee mountains, especially on the east side. And so, but both on the west side and the north side, there are fertile plains. And so you've got fertile land to farm. You've got a freshwater source. You've got great transportation because of the Via Maris that runs through there. You've got security because of the fact that the Via Maris runs through Capernaum and down by the Sea of Galilee. You've got security because of its military outpost. So all of these things, this is why towns, cities, and villages were built all around the Sea of Galilee. Now, what you're looking at here, and I know it's not really super easy to see, but what you're looking at here is, this is from an architectural archaeologist named Lynn Rittmeyer's done a lot of work over there. And what he has done here is he has identified the remains of the various harbors at the time of Christ around the Sea of Galilee. These are the ones that we know of. And you can see them. And usually what these harbors were, they were built of the black basalt, the typical rock, the volcanic rock that was typical to the area of the Galilee. And piers were built that jutted out into the lake. Sometimes breakwaters were formed as piers came out and they circled around so that waves, as they would come in, maybe on more of a stormy day, that the ships and the boats that were docked there would be spared from the winds and the waves. But what you see here is, and by the way, here's the largest. This is Gergesa, or Kursi today. It has a breakwater, and you can see it's kind of circular. That breakwater is over 600 feet long, so it was a significant harbor there. But all of these little spots, you can see Capernaum up there, you can see the major harbor. It has several of those piers that jutted out into the lake. But all around it, you can see all the piers, at least 16 of them circling, 16 harbors, which emphasizes that it was also, the Sea of Galilee was also just a transportation artery. You don't just have the road going there, but just the lake itself, as towns were connected. And how do you get from one town to another? And that is the lake. And so it was a major transportation artery itself. Jesus would get into the boat and let's go to the other side. And so it's obvious why this was such a concentrated place in terms of population. How concentrated? Well, it's impossible to know, that we don't know with certainty. But through archaeology, through the archaeological remains that are all around the area of the Sea of Galilee, it is estimated that in Roman times, in the time of Christ, the population around the Sea of Galilee was probably about 200,000 people. Now, to put that in perspective, at that period of time, the entire Herodian kingdom, the kingdom that was Herod the Great was given rule over by the Romans, and then that was divided between his sons, the entire Herodian kingdom was probably less than 1 million. So 20 to 25% of the population of the entire kingdom probably was around the Sea of Galilee. And so Jesus didn't go to some out-of-the-way place. Now, Nazareth, 16 miles to the west, was an out-of-the-way backwater. But where he went to minister was anything but out of the way. In fact, that's why we see in many of the miracles that Jesus performs, there are thousands of people following. And there are thousands of people there. Like, for instance, when he fed 5,000 on the plain of Bethesda. We'll kind of get to that area in just a minute. By the way, the plain of Bethesda is right up there. When he feeds 5,000, that's 5,000 men. But when you consider family units, women, children, it's probably more like 20,000. You say, well, where did they all come from? Well, they came from that area. That it's such a concentrated population area because of all of these factors. Now, what do you think the major industry at the Sea of Galilee was? Anybody got a guess? I think I heard fishing. Fishing was. Wasn't the only industry. We know from Capernaum because of the remains there. It was also an industrial center. They made things like grinding stones and olive presses and all of those things. So there was manufacturing. We can see it in the remains at places like Chorazin. We can see it in the places like Capernaum. But make no mistake about it, the major industry around this area was fishing. And it shouldn't surprise us then that so many of Jesus' disciples were fishermen. So as we think about Jesus, we think about his life, we think about his ministry, I don't want you to think, ever wonder, well, why did he go to such a, remote backwater? It wasn't a remote backwater at all. So it was a concentrated population area, plus you had people from all over the world going past Capernaum, past this northwest shore of the Sea of Galilee, as they're going back and forth to Asia and Europe and Africa. And so it is actually an incredibly strategic place for Jesus to do his ministry. To do it mostly in Jerusalem, Gentile, though it wouldn't be part of the Gentile. Gentiles don't really come and go through Jerusalem in Jesus' day. And so it's the perfect spot for Jesus to spend in ministry. Okay, well, now let's kind of move on. So what we're going to do, and this is the area that we're going to kind of focus on this morning. As I said, we're going to just kind of do a survey. We're going to go around the Sea of Galilee, and then we're going to have a faith lesson at the end. But we're going to start down here at a place, let me get my little writing implement out. We're going to start here at Magdala. We're going to make our way then north, and we're going to make our way northeast, and then we're just going to come down this side, and then we're going to end up here in Tiberias. Tiberias was the capital of Herod Antipas. He built that as a capital city, named it after the Roman emperor, Tiberius. And so that's how it got its name. Jesus called him that fox, Herod. And so he's the one who actually built this. There are first century remains of Tiberias today, but it's the largest city, modern city also on the Sea of Galilee today. So this is the area that we're going to stay in as we kind of circle around, because as I said, in this area, at least 70%, and you can tell I'm really liking this writing thing, on that north half of the Sea of Galilee, about 70% of all of Jesus' ministry took place. So, okay. Now, so that's a map we just saw of all those piers. And one of those piers, of course, that I pointed out is right here, Capernaum. You can see several of the remains. These are the remains of the piers from the first century, the Roman period, the time of Christ, that jutted out. You say, how do they know that? Well, because the remains are still there in the water, and they were able to, and they have been able over the years to find these and to locate these, archaeologists have, because of the nature of the Sea of Galilee. By the way, the Sea of Galilee sits about 700 feet below sea level. It is, I think it's the lowest freshwater lake, I want to say, in the world. I think. Somebody to Google that for me to make sure. Is the Sea of Galilee the lowest freshwater lake, elevation-wise? Now, I do know, the Jordan River is going to be fed at the bottom. We'll see that in just a minute. The Sea of Galilee is going to empty into the Jordan River. The Jordan River is going to go then down to the Dead Sea. And the Dead Sea is the lowest spot on the face of the earth. Nobody has to Google that. I know that. But anybody Google that for me? Anybody check that? It is, okay. It is. It is the lowest freshwater lake. So it's pretty neat, these kind of geological features and geographical features of Israel. You've got the lowest freshwater lake in the world, and you've got the lowest spot on the earth in the world. It's along that fault line. The Jordan Valley is a part of a major fault system. And so we'll talk a little bit about that later when we look at some of the remains that were destroyed by earthquakes. But here is a picture. The reason that archaeologists are able to find all of these harbors and have found at least 16 harbors around the Sea of Galilee that date back to the time of Christ is because there are some periods when rainfall is really bad over there, and they have periods of drought. And when there are large periods of drought, long periods of drought, the Sea of Galilee recedes. And then, of course, when drought's over and the good rains come during the rainy season, the level of the Sea of Galilee will rise again. Well, this is a picture right here in Capernaum, and this is during one of those drought periods here. You can see what these are. To our naked eye, they don't look like much. But archaeologists and historians can tell as they begin to do their archaeological work that these features were constructed piers. And so this is in Capernaum, and that's how they are able to say, we know that there were this many number of piers, at least along the shoreline of Capernaum. Just as an example of that. This is a church called the Church of the Primacy of Peter. And we'll be talking about that in just a minute. It's at a place called Tabgha, just down from Capernaum. And you can see the water level here. By the way, these steps right here, this remnants of this building been around for a long time. Those steps that you see right there, those are from the 4th century. So those are there from the 300s. But you can see the water level, how it comes all the way up to the church. Well, take a look at this next picture. That's the church of, there it is in the background. That's the Church of the Primacy of Peter. And you can see the water was up to here in that first picture. And now, this is in 2014. That first picture that I showed you was in 1998. I think it was, 1980, I'm sorry. Farrell Jenkins was a brother in Christ who did a lot of work in the Holy Land. And so these pictures come from his website, these two pictures. That was from 1980. That's from 2014 after a long period of drought. And you can see just how far the Sea of Galilee had receded at that point. So it comes and it goes. And it's because of that they're able to really find out, discover all of these harbors that just dotted the Sea of Galilee during the time of Christ. Okay, here's kind of a map that'll kind of give you a sense of where we're going. just real quickly, we're going to start here in Magdala. We're also going to take a glance at Arbela, the cliffs of Arbel. We're going to move up here, and this is what we just looked at, that picture there, the receding water. That's Tabga. And then we're going to move over here in this area, just glance at Capernaum again. We're going to go up to Chorazin real quickly. We're going to take a look at Bethsaida. We're going to then go down to Gergesa or Kursi, and then we're going to come back here, and we're going to end things in Tiberias. So with that in mind, and that gives you a little bit closer view. It shows where some of the things, events in the life of Christ, where many of the things that he did in his ministry, from teaching and healing to the Sermon on the Mount, lots of miracles where he calls the apostles, casts out a demoniac, all of those things we're going to take a look at here in a minute. There's another little neat little map that I ran across that, again, emphasizes, you can see all of the places here that we're going to take a look at, from Magdala to Tabga, Chorazin, Capernaum, Bethsaida, down here at Kursi, and then back over to Tiberias. And so as we make our way around, here is more of a satellite map, and you can see here and get a perspective of how close all of this stuff is. Here is Tiberias. You can see that it's a modern city down there. You probably maybe can see that it's a modern city from that view. But here you got Mount Arbel. Here you got Magdala, Tabga, Capernaum, Chorazin, Bethsaida. And you can see the fertility, by the way, of the plain of Bethesda right there. And then you've got Kursi right there. So, Jesus spends a lot of time walking from these places and between these places, or sailing between these places. So let's start with Arbel. And let me kind of go back here. And as we talk about Arbel, we're talking about the place right here. There you go, Mount Arbel. Now, we looked at it last week, just a view from it. These cliffs are about 1,200 feet above the Sea of Galilee. And it's one of the first places that we go when we're over there, because the view of Arbel is really spectacular. Now, you see Arbel in the background. So if you're on the east side, or if you're out like in the lake, or you're looking back east, that's the cliffs of Arbel there. So that's about 1,200 feet. There's caves all along there. The cliffs of Arbel have been significant in history. People, when they were fighting with the Romans, they would go there. They would. It was kind of a fortress area. It was kind of like Masada, and we could talk more about it, but we don't really have time for that. But there you can see just the view of the lake from there. You get a beautiful perspective. And so we're going to go down now to a place I mentioned last week, and that is Magdala. Recently discovered, recently excavated. And again, that's a view from the cliffs of Arbel. And right here is Magdala. And so as we go down a little bit clearer, this is really a picture from the last few years, about the last 5 years or so, because what you see here is this is our hotel right there. Some of you who were with us on the last trip, you may recognize that. That was an open plain. There wasn't much there until about a few years ago. And I think I told you, in fact, I know I told you that it's owned by the Catholics, and they were going to build this guest house that's there. And they always, anytime you dig in Israel, you have to first of all get permission from the Israeli Antiquities Authority. They began to dig there to give them clearance, and they hit remains. And what they dug up were the remains of Magdala. Now again, what's the significance of Magdala? Who's from Magdala? Mary. So we're talking about one of Jesus' most devout, passionate followers. And when I say devout and passionate, I mean devout and passionate. And when you understand what Jesus did for her, you can understand why she held on so tightly to Christ. We'll talk about her later when we go look at Magdala more closely. It's a beautiful sight. You can see here again, the cliffs of Arbel are right here as you go up. Here's the hotel. I don't know, some of you who were here last week, remember I showed you a view of the sunrise in the reflection at the chapel there. There's that little chapel right there. And this is where we come out to take a look at the sunrise here. So it's a beautiful place here along the Sea of Galilee where Mary Magdalene was from. Now, right here is, you can see all of the, or many of the excavations. What we're going to see later, not today, right under that covered area there by the hotel. And by the way, the dining room is right here. And so sometimes you're sitting by the dining room and looking at it. That's a synagogue. It's a first century synagogue. And I can say with almost, no, as much as I can say without a doubt, and we'll look at the synagogue, not today, but another day when we go to Magdala, Jesus was in that synagogue. And when you're looking at the remains of that synagogue, Jesus was there because the text says in Matthew chapter 4 and verse 23 that Jesus went all throughout Galilee teaching in the synagogues. This is just down the shoreline from Capernaum. He would have been, and it was one of the ports, it was one of the harbors. Jesus would have been in there. So under that's the synagogue. Over here, right beside the synagogue, is the remnants of the marketplace from the time of Christ for the city. Also had a major fish processing plant there. We know that from the archaeological remains. Not surprising, it's the Sea of Galilee. It's the major part of the economy. Over here is the major residential areas that have been excavated. Now, the city was much bigger. But these are the areas that have been excavated, probably the only areas that will be excavated. Enough has been excavated to know what this is and to find the most significant parts of the city. A little bit of the residential area, a little bit of the marketplace, and the synagogue there at Magdala. And so it's a wonderful place there. Again, you can see Arbel in the background here, the cliffs of Arbel that overlook Magdala here. Okay, we're going to move up now. We're going to move up to the area of Gennesar. Let me show you where that is. We're talking at a place about right here. So Magdala's here, so we're going to move here north. And as we move on, we come to this place called Gennesar. You can probably see it. Let's see. You can probably see it there. It's clear. Hopefully it's clear enough to see it. And you can see a lot of the fields probably there. So again, the fertility of the area. But Gennesar is a really important place. The water's green because it doesn't always look that way. In fact, I've never really seen it green. It's because of the algae that's in it. And depending on the sun and these camera shots that were taken from drones, the guys who took them from drones, it just looks green. When you stand and look at the Sea of Galilee, it doesn't look green. But from the picture and the shots and the angles and the light and the temperature and everything, it gives it this green appearance. So you're going to see some of the green appearance. But here at Gennesar, a very important find archaeologically from the time of Christ. This museum right here, it's a wonderful museum. This is on a kibbutz. A kibbutz in Israel is an area of it's a communal living place where people voluntarily come together and it's a collective. It's kind of like, well, communism. And people go, see, communism can work. No, communism doesn't work except there. And there's two reasons that it works there in these kibbutz or kibbutzim, plural. It works there because, first of all, everybody who lives on a kibbutz is there voluntarily. They can leave anytime they want. They're not locked in. So that's number one. It's just people who want to be there. And people who are committed to that style of living, where the clinic's there and the school's there and everybody's houses there and everything. It's not that they don't get off. They do. But first of all, it's all voluntarily. And second of all, they operate in a market economy. It's a commune, but they live in a capitalistic society. This commune, and the different kibbutzim that you'll find over there, some are agricultural, some are hospitality. This one is a hospitality industry. And so they have a hotel there. I've tried to stay there before. I never can get arrangements there. They book up super fast. I've stayed in a couple of hotels on kibbutzim. But see, if you go there and you stay in a hotel and it's awful, nobody's going to stay there anymore. So they operate in a market economy, so that it's always good food, clean. You know, it's nothing plush or anything, but it's nice, it's clean, it's good food. So this is a kibbutz. And they've got this wonderful museum there. You can also see this pier here. This is also where you go to board the boats for the boat rides. Everybody takes a boat ride just about over there. They should take a boat ride over there. It's one of the great thrills over there. But That museum there's a little closer look at that museum there. It contains this. One of the great finds about, 35 years ago or something like that, was during one of those periods of great drought where the Sea of Galilee receded. They found this intact, that would be considered intact. They found this intact boat from the first century. This is a fishing boat. Mind-blowing. It's 2,000 years old. It's from the time of Christ. Wood does not survive when it's submerged in fresh water. This did because it was covered over in mud. And somebody, as they were, down there, as the Sea of Galilee receded, they noticed something that looked like wood, and they started kind of dig, and then they called in the authorities, the antiquity authorities, and they came and they started to dig, and they discovered this is a boat. And it was a race against time because the lake was rising. And the museum there, they have this, audiovisual story of they got to get this out without tearing it up because it's like a wet napkin. And so they got to get it out without tearing it up and then get it preserved. And they finally, after a long period of preservation and all, they have it preserved. You can see, all of the ribs, the wood. This is literally from the time of Jesus. It is from the time of Jesus. When Jesus gets in a boat up near Capernaum, this is Gennesar's up near Capernaum. He gets in a boat. Who knows? Jesus could have got in this boat. Now, what are the odds of that? Slim to none. But nevertheless, it was there during the time of Christ. Now, to give it perspective, this is one of those pictures you can see all the watermarks on. You have to buy this. Well, I wasn't going to buy it. So I just copied it. It gives you perspective of the size of it. It would hold about a dozen men and a sizable catch of fish. It was a typical size fishing boat. And so when we read about Jesus on the Sea of Galilee and the boats and the disciples in the boats, what are we talking about? This is what we're talking about. This is the kind of vessel. And so it's one of the great archaeological finds from the time of Christ. There in the museum shows what that boat would have looked like before it was encased in mud for 2,000 years. And you can see, get a perspective there of its size, and the oars that would probably also had a mast on it, a masted vessel as well. But that's what it would have looked like in the kind of boats that Jesus would have sailed on. Well, as I said, it's from here. You can see all those boats down there that you launch into the Sea of Galilee, and it is one of the great thrills to go out there on the sea, where much of the, around which Jesus did many of his work, and two of his greatest miracles happened there. You can see there, by the way, the cliffs of Arbel there in the background. This is from our last trip. You can see the nice size. There's always plenty of room there. And you can see, again, there in the background, behind the head of that is Kevin Montgomery's brother and sister-in-law who went with us on the last trip. You can see the cliffs of Arbel there in the background. It was a beautiful day. It's usually a beautiful day when you're there, and it is, again, one of the great treats to go out there on the Sea of Galilee and reflect, and you think about all that happened there. It was such a wonderful day, such a pleasant day. We all gathered toward the front, and I'm telling you what, it's one of the great classrooms when you can do Bible teaching from these sites, and you can talk about these things. It is one of the great moving spiritual experiences. Just wish everybody could experience that. So that is around this particular area right here. Okay, so we've looked at this. Now let's go to Tabgha real quickly. So the next place that we're going to go is right here. We're going to look at two things very quickly, just a very summary glance at it. That's Tabgha, and then the Mount of Beatitudes. By the way, you can see here, when I talk about the fertility of the area, you can see all of the agriculture from this view that is around the Sea of Galilee. And again, that's what made it, one of the many things that made it such an important population center. Okay, this is Tabgha. And this is that church that we looked at earlier, the Church of the Primacy of St. Peter. Way here in the background, you can see a teeny, tiny church. That's on top of what is called the Mount of Beatitudes. That's the traditional site of the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5 through 7. We don't know exactly where the Sermon on the Mount took place, but we know it was in that area. We know when you're standing on that area, it's in eye shot. And so geographical descriptions and all makes that a very strong candidate for the place where Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount. But the primacy of St. Peter here, this church here at Tabgha. There's a couple of places. The significance of this place, this is kind of the traditional spot where Jesus called his disciples. If you remember the New Testament, Jesus is walking along the Sea of Galilee, and Peter, and he's there throwing a hook in. So there's different ways that people fished. Drag nets and cast nets and a traditional hook. And so they're there. So they're somewhere on the shore near Capernaum. This is very, very close to Capernaum. It's right in the same vicinity. And this is where people would come to fish a lot because there's like 7 springs here. And so it was a hotbed. They didn't have the rangefinder that showed the fish, but they knew where the fish were. And so this was a place that people would go to fish, like Peter was doing on that particular day. And so this is a very, very likely spot of where Jesus called his first disciples. Now, we don't know elsewhere. It's also kind of the traditional site where after the resurrection, Jesus comes back and meets his people in Galilee, and he cooks them breakfast there on the shore of the Sea of Galilee of fish. And so kind of traditional site it's the place because this is where people would catch fish. They would go with their hook like Peter was on that day. It was one of those spots for that kind of fishing. And so that's a real possibility. We know it was in this area. We can't get any better than that. So that's the traditional spot of that. So again, you can see the fertility of the fields all around, just beautiful, fertile area. So we move over here, and again, here is, we look at, this is the area of, this is the Mount of Beatitudes. You can see this, I don't know, you see that thing right there? You're going to see some of that later on. Those are pictures when you see them, they're like humongous screens. And what that is those are banana groves. They still grow a lot of fruit in this area. And so those are banana groves. Well, hey, let's kind of flop through here. Again, here's you go is the area. There's that little church here, the Sermon on the Mount, the location, traditional location of where Jesus called his disciples there at Tabgha. Again, another view that you can see of the church there, the Sermon on the Mount, and again, the primacy of Peter. You can see here, by the way, the lake is back up, and you can see how it is all the way up there against the foundations of the church. This is from the Mount of Beatitudes. As you're standing on Mount of Beatitudes, and there's the church there, you can see what a beautiful perspective it is, how much you can see of the Sea of Galilee. And it is absolutely a spectacular view of the sea. By the way, here are those banana groves all down through there. You can see also all of the farming and the agriculture that goes on around there. Okay, let's move on down. We've got Capernaum here that we want to just glance real quick. We were there last week, so we won't spend much time. Chorazin up there, Bethsaida right here. This is that evangelical triangle. This is that triangle where most of Jesus' miracles were performed. Almost, and that's from the lips of Jesus himself. And so you've got this small area. This is a huge population area when these are combined. And so this is where most of the miracles of Jesus took place. This is from the Mount of Beatitudes here. Again, here is the church here. This is what's called Sower's Cove, where Jesus went out down by the lake near Capernaum, and he is teaching the parables of the kingdom. Sower went out to sow. That's called Sower's Cove, kind of a traditional spot because Capernaum is right down there. And again, you see right here, you get another view of there's that Sower's Cove as you're looking out across the Sea of Galilee. Here's Capernaum again, or that we saw last week. You can see the church there that we looked at, the synagogue that we looked at and explored last week. Jesus' hometown. You can see it there from a different perspective. Looking east, you can see it there. Then we're going to go up here to Chorazin. Let's take a look at Chorazin really quick. And so as we take a look at Chorazin, it's only about 2 miles away. Here is Capernaum right down here. And so it's about a 2-mile walk from there. And so let's take a look at it. Here are the ruins of Capernaum set up here. Chorazin. It is a beautiful excavated place where Chorazin was. You can see the lake down here. Here is a different perspective looking back toward the lake. Here are the ruins that have been excavated of Chorazin. Here, of course, is the Sea of Galilee. You see it down there. Right over this hill is where Capernaum is. I mentioned last week one of the things I'm hoping to do in April. For those who are able, not everybody will be able to, and that will be fine. We'll have other arrangements for them for just a couple of hours max. There is a trail that comes down through here. It's mostly downhill all the way. And I have been told it is a nice walk from Chorazin to Capernaum. And this is, as you're looking at that, this is what Jesus would have seen. Because you can see how raw it is there. Things haven't changed a lot. As far as the landscape, and as you're looking at the landscape there, things have not changed a lot since the time of Christ. And so as you're walking from Chorazin down to Capernaum, you're basically you're seeing what Jesus saw, you're hearing what Jesus saw. But it gives you perspective. Look at that. So there's Capernaum down here, Chorazin here, Bethsaida's right over here. And so just think about that. In that triangle, that is where most of Jesus' miracles took place. Okay, well, listen. I'm never really good with time. So I've got Bethsaida there. I've got Kersey there. We're not going to come back and finish this overview, but we are going to go to Bethsaida on a dedicated day, and we're going to go to Kersey. So, no, you're not going to miss anything. I'm just going to skip on down to the very end because we got like 2 minutes. And so we got to get a faith lesson in as we think about it. So as you see this area and you understand the significance of it strategically of where Jesus was and how much of his ministry was and all these places where he did some of his miracles. But a couple of his most familiar miracles wasn't around the Sea of Galilee. It was on the Sea of Galilee. And of course, what we're thinking about there, what 2 miracles are we thinking about? Walking on water, calming the storm. Those are the 2. Matthew chapter 8, calming the storm. Walking on water, Matthew chapter 14. So one of the great things when you're out there on the Sea of Galilee is, you just can't help but to reflect on those just indescribable moments of God showing his glory and his power over everything, including nature. And as we think about Matthew chapter 14, Jesus walking on this lake, and the way it's geographically positioned, and many of you have heard me say this before, and you know this, the reason storms and squalls can blow up really quickly is because of its geographical positioning. It is so low, almost 700 feet below sea level. You've got the mountains to the north, right up the Jordan Valley. The Sea of Galilee is fed not only by underground springs, but also by the Jordan River. There's 3 springs north of the Jordan River at Dan and at a place called Caesarea Philippi. And there's one more, and those springs feed it, and they come down in it. And so as you go up north of the Sea of Galilee, you start climbing into the mountains. And then you're going to see the snow-capped peak of Mount Hermon. And when the cold wind comes down from the north through those gorges of the Galilee, and the warm air from the Mediterranean comes from the east, it kind of meets over this basin. And so squalls can come up pretty quickly. And for boats, you saw the size of the boat from the model there. For modern big vessels, larger vessels that are on the lake today, they don't pose really a threat. But for those vessels in the time of Christ, they could pose a major threat. And there was a particularly bad one this particular day in Matthew chapter 14. Jesus wasn't with them. And of course, we know the story. Jesus sees them and he walks toward them. They are afraid and they see him. And so they're terrified. They think it's a ghost. He reassures them it's not a ghost. And Peter says, if it's you, Lord, ask me to come to you. And Peter gets out. Jesus says, come on. He steps out. He begins to walk on water. And as he's coming to Jesus, it says he then sees the wind. And he begins to sink. And Jesus reaches down and Jesus takes him. He falters and Jesus saves him. And then he says, you have little faith. Now, let me say this real quick in 1 minute. He wasn't rebuking Peter for not having faith because Peter had faith. You don't step out in a storm without faith. And so Peter had faith. He had faith to get out of the boat. And here's the thing. He had faith enough to get out of the boat, but he didn't have faith enough to carry him across that stormy water. And, once he got out of the boat, things looked a lot more terrifying than they did in the boat. And it reminds me that's how life is a lot. I think we all have faith. And it's really easy to have faith in here. I have no problem having faith here with you people. And there are just places I can go and people that I'm with that where I feel my faith is extremely strong. But the reality is, when we get out of places like this and we just get into the world and suddenly the world starts hammering us and storms come, the reality is we get frustrated, we get anxious, we get scared, and Satan tempts us to wonder, where is God in all of this and doesn't God care? And we just take our eyes off Christ. And that's what Peter did. When he saw the wind, he lost his focus on Christ. And so I think the big faith lesson here, as we think about what happened in the middle of this lake, not around the lake, in the middle of the lake, is a lesson that in those storms, in storms of life, one of the things that is absolutely imperative is we don't lose our focus on Christ. And here's the next thing, real quickly. Give me 15 seconds. And when we falter, you can count on Jesus Christ to pick you back up. And so keep your focus on Christ. Don't lose sight of him. Faith can easily falter in storms, but we've got Jesus there. And if we keep our focus on him, we won't drown. Okay, thank you so much for being here. We're going to continue on the next 2 or 3 weeks up here in the area of Galilee because, again, this is where it all happened. This is the ministry of Christ. Thanks for being here. Have a great rest of the day. Lord willing, I'll see you tonight.